Thinking about the $400 million airport investments, 9 million tourists, and the cost of living? Wondering if transforming the airports into smart cities could reduce the people's suffering? Pause, think about it with intentional thought, and consider where we go from here. Stay tuned and hear what Chief Innovation Officer Maurice Jenkins got to share with us about how smart cities can unlock our potential.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative 242.
Welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. Join our co-sponsors DomDev Enterprises and Page Investments and our friends from Something to Think About in this conversation this evening. Just jot your notes down in the chat and we'll endeavor to answer them. So this evening, as you can see, we have this bearded fellow on the screen. You know, he's a little bit younger than me. But you know, I can't grow no beard, so that's why they like to make me look like I was a child. But you know, Mr. Maurice Jenkins. Maurice, how you doing today?
Dre, I am good, my brother. I am good. Happy. It's so good to see you. It's been so long. It's great to have the opportunity to get together with you and talk to you and your audience, especially back on this side of the world. You know, it's a fantastic thing. Given what I'm doing in Miami and what's going on in North America and all the things I've been doing and engaging within industry, within Europe and other regions, it's great to see what's going on in the Caribbean, right? And being able to have that discussion and have that dialogue and just break bread. We've come a long way since university, my friend. We've come a long way.
Oh, yes, very, very long way. And no more bunk beds. I guess you get these big double king size beds and things now versus all these things. Because I mean, when we started, you know, in Miami, in particular Florida, you all were starting more on almost on this agenda of an affirmative action type. You weren't there, but you know, it was a struggle. It was to get jobs back then, and you made it in, and you stuck with your holding on the gown tails, learning as much as you can in the system. And here it is now. You go from one perspective of minority to another, which I consider, and I know you can tell me it ain't true, but I believe it's true. You are in the top minority of leaders leading this global industry called aviation. And I take my hat off. I ain't gonna hear the pot, but you know.
I shave too. Don't worry, we're good, man. We're good.
Take all of that off for you, right? Awesome, man. Very proud of you. You know,
I appreciate that. Truly appreciate it. You know, it's a challenge to understand, and I hope your audience can get and realize our industry, as dynamic as it is, it lacks that resource. We don't have that many people of color or minorities. If you look at anything from a diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint of or people of brown skin and dark skin, actually engaging in a field such as ours, and it's truly dynamic. And I say that to the point, there are a few airports and some good friends also from the Caribbean, and me from Jamaica and several others. But when you look at it from a dynamic, and I look from a very large perspective to your audience, airports and this transportation sector of ours, we move over 4 billion people a year. If you look at that number and the economic impact of what 4 billion people can do, it's transformational. It's truly, truly transformational. And having the opportunity to get a piece of that pie to service 4 billion people, right? So let's take that number and set it aside and everything that 4 billion people touch. But now if you take this and go circa 5, 10, 15 years from now, and I think it may be less, that 4 billion people who are getting on airplanes, it's supposed to get to almost 8 to 9 billion people. How are you supposed to do that based upon your existing infrastructure that you're dealing with it today? It's not sustainable. So you need to be able to do construction development. You need to change your way of thinking. You need to look at the economic impact. How can you create jobs and go ahead and embrace this ecosystem of ours to ensure that what you see in one airport, you see in another airport? Now, when you see one airport, you've only seen one airport because
Right.
of the economic factors and the requirements may drive different levels of change. But holistically, we have to have the ability to be able to engage and interact. And I think that's where it's lacking in some aspects. So if you're looking at 4 billion or 8 billion people, how are you supposed to effectuate that level of change and make those movements and be able to cater to those wants and those demands? So if you look at that number, just to give you an idea, we went from 46 million pre-COVID. Now, last year was a record year for us. 52 million people came through Miami in 2023, and those numbers are
Mm-hmm.
growing. It's so based upon that, there's a level of want, there's a level of expectation from the traveling public. So now
Mm-hmm.
you got to cater to that customer experience, one. And I hope we also realize as we're looking at catering to that aspect, is what allowed us to survive during the pandemic was cargo. Now that
Right.
people are flying again, we need to ensure that cargo makes billions of dollars. That we're also ensuring that we don't neglect the engagement of cargo as well and have that ability to build upon that infrastructure and deal with that level of engagement and demand. And you looking at from the Bahamas, you import everything, which means cargo is big. So
Right.
what does your cargo imports look like? You may not export much, but what does your cargo imports look like? What's the ability to drive businesses within that cargo import, that importation side? Whether you're going by, especially by
Right.
air, what do the cargo
Right.
carriers look like? What do the logistics carriers look like? So it has the opportunity to create jobs and impact the community itself as a whole, and being able to have some level of sustainability within yourselves, right? So it's a lot to look at that starts to drive this formulation of what we're
Right.
trying to get into. So just want to say a little bit of the framework of the dynamics that sits around us in this global ecosystem that we're dealing with.
Right. And one of the things is when I was a part of a group that was looking at bidding on the airports during the last administration. Um, uh, Grand Bahama in particular is a industrial city that has tourism and culture and all that kind of stuff tied to it also. They have that free port machinery, and that is an ideal location for the Bahamas cargo to be happening through, and so forth. And so we could dive into that a little bit later on as we go. But one of the things I wanted to highlight up front here was that that Stephen Burrow, who is the deputy director of telecommunications development bureau at the ITU, the UN actually um, with the ITU in terms of the ICTs, etc. He says that it is more feasible to invest in digital than in basically brick and mortar infrastructure. And so when we look at that and my experience of plus 30 years in telecommunications um, and building the digital arena here in the
Mhm.
country and stuff like that, I could very well see why he would say that. So tell us then, what is your experience on the returns of investment from you being, and I didn't ask you before, but maybe we should do it now because um, people out there might not know exactly, but when we talk, we're talking about you are the head honcho in all intents and purposes from a technology point of view at MIA, Miami International Airport, and its group of airports that out there. But tell us a little bit about that journey so people could get a perspective on the technology part because you were driving technology from the IT portion and everything structurally from that point of view for the longest. I think back in the early 90s, mid 90s or thereabouts, if I remember right. Um,
You hit the nail on the head. So back then, and it's great to be the chief innovation officer right now. I don't have to really work for almost on the IT side any longer, but in building out that information technology framework, on average is what $42 million a year. I was dealing with for almost 10, 15, 20 years. building out IT infrastructure to support the business. So we're the only airport that has over 100 airlines that operate out of MIA. So be able to drive 100
I'm losing you a
airlines.
little bit, Maurice. Your voice going down a little bit.
Oh, can
Yeah,
you hear me now?
maybe. Yeah, yeah. Maybe just
All right.
channel more towards the mic, so wherever the
All
mic
right,
is. Yeah.
so let's see what happened. I was saying, roughly spending within the IT arena over $40 million a year just building out IT infrastructure, application development, and building services to enhance the digital footprint for the traveling public. It's a continual task, and based upon airline dynamics, airline changes, as well as customer and passenger demand, we have to have the ability to be able to pivot and address and deal with that. So it's always been a continual for us, not allowing us to rest on our laurels on what we've designed and what we've built out. So it's a constant change in regards to our airport design as to what we put together. That's my girl Shell, as what we put together and
There
how
you
we
go.
make that work, right? So within those challenges themselves, so you're dropping 40, $50 million, you're looking at what airline wants and desires and their needs are to operate and to fully to be able to function efficiently and effectively as they're moving passengers safely through this ecosystem of ours. That's always become a challenge. And it continues to do so as more and more airlines keep coming into the industry. More and more airlines keep having more of a level of demand. More and more airlines are coming in with larger aircraft that have a huge amount of data that needs to be processed and managed and handled, right? So that's a continual challenge that's building out that digital footprint. As we now transition from digital on one side to looking at innovation and digital transformation, it's how can we work towards improving the processes? The gentleman hit the nail on the head. Traditional brick and mortar will not solve the issues of air transport and the demands of air transport, especially if you're landlocked. So, okay,
Right.
given, and I'll take PIA right now, for instance. How many runways do you have? I think two, right? One or two?
I think three, but I mean they
Three.
only really use two. Yeah.
Exactly, right? And I think the last one was the JetBlue crash. But if you take two runways, if you increase in the level of demand that you needed, if you wanted to add another runway, it'll take you about 20, after you do all your economic impact studies, the whole 9 yards, you're talking
Right.
another 15, 20 years, right? So you have to now look for the planning for the future. So from an efficiency standpoint, from next gen, from dealing with the Civil Aviation Authority of how you can fly, stagger those flights, optimal peak times, and how do you deal with the efficiencies inside those terminals, it's going to
Right.
be key. And you have to create proper workflow. So the technology is what's going to help. So innovation and technology, CBRS, 5G, facial biometrics, all these things I'm working on in my airport today to be able to deal with that demand. I'm seeing other airports in other regions of the world doing the same thing from that same ecosystem perspective. And unless you're building a greenfield, brand new airport from scratch, it's you're going down a path that you cannot come back from. So therefore, you need to work on technology. That digital
Right.
footprint is critical, and you need the people with the right skill set and resources to be able to do so. So I'm hoping that these young up and comings that are coming out of trade school, that are coming out of college and university, are looking to fill these gaps and
Right.
coming up with new systems and new dynamics as well, which is critical, and it's an essential need for us right now.
When Devon, your godchild, who you, anyway, but he when he graduated from Riddle, they told him that he would just walk into a job because there was something like 400,000 vacancies in the industry then, and I think that was like 2011. And so, if you talk about digital expanding, what is happening because of it adds multiple more layers for people to engage in. Then, like, what is the count now? Because if we look at just to jump ahead a little bit, uh, Miami International Airport, etc., has an annual economic impact of about $32 billion a year, and that's about three times, well, not three, yeah, but three times the Bahamas GDP as a whole. Roughly one out of 4.6 jobs of the city is done by your airports. Um,
Mhm.
so to me, these are huge things that provides huge opportunities for persons in the Bahamas and Caribbean to be able to leverage their airports in order to drive commerce, etc. But when you look at that from your perspective now, you say you want to tap into the new breed who are out there graduating like you were back then when they grab you. Um, you wasn't focused, but now you're focused. But anyway, I can throw my little
That's good.
jazz every once in a while. Yeah,
Don't tell
yeah.
anybody. But
No, no.
the challenge, yeah, but happy you got to realize one thing, and I think the challenge and your audience to understand the challenge comes to play is given the fact of you have your generation X, Y, Z, and this new one called A, which is this whole AI framework, and I'm sure we'll
A.
get to that as well. As people are right sizing out of this industry, there is going to be a lack of intellectual property that needs to be maintained and needs to be cultivated. And as people are right sizing and leaving industry, where's that intellectual property coming from? Are we bringing in new talent to be able to look at the sustainability and the workability of our system of airports? Because if you look at it realistically, with exception of healthcare and some are going into other retail environments, et cetera, not too many people have actually saying, it's attractive enough to look at an airport. An airport's a city in itself. I mean, we
Right.
generated $32 billion in this economic impact. And I think the
Right.
last numbers I looked at globally within Miami and our catchment area is like 1 in 10 jobs comes out of that airport. So whether you're working in cargo, you're shipping flowers, logistics, everything is driven by that airport. But you want to get to the point of all these multiple facets that drive this industry is where we need to find that talent and then get that talent engaged and then change the dynamic and then work on that technology portion and get this new mindset of this new breed of individuals that want to work on development of adding to that mobile development, looking at that architecture, application development, new ideas in regards to enhanced business processes will come from this next generation of what it is that you're looking for that would say, if I was traversing through this airport, if I was doing cargo, if I was doing anything in this field or industry, what would I like to see or do better? How do you create that think tank and put those sets of individuals together? Right. And then
Right.
with that, now you get to build upon that and you create that momentum. Because we're working on two things right now, just to give an idea. And I think one of the projects closes on Friday. We're looking for startups that can create some ideas to build out this airport of ours, newer levels of innovation. The top three happy get $100,000 a piece and 6 months to cultivate that in my airport environment. And I'm having the same opportunity when I go to London on Sunday to meet with the bank and have the same discussion of how can we cultivate new levels of technology to drive our industry forward. And I think we owe it to industry, we owe it to ourselves to have that ability to do so. But that's going to come from this new generation of creative thinkers. And we want those creative thinkers.
Right. Yeah. So you're good people here, sending their love, and I guess we can get this continue to come all night long because they ain't see you in so long. Till
Yeah. Hey, mommy,
that's mom
tell
sending.
my mommy I said, what's up?
Yeah, she right there listening, checking you out. She can get a million one questions when we finish, but that's so forth. And then now help me out, Killer B, Killer B,
Killer
yeah,
Brew.
huh? Brew,
Right
Killer
up your
Brew, sorry.
right up your alley. And she's
My life,
she's an
yeah, yeah.
engineer. She's an engineer.
Excellent discussion on emerging technologies, but yes, awesome. The future is near. Yeah, we want to make sure that the future be now for everybody, not just
All right.
the
So
crew
if I
been
look at the
there.
question, transformative for the aviation industry in the near future. So several things, and that's a great question. And thank you for posing that. So if you're looking that from an emerging standpoint, we want to focus on several facets. One is going to be how do you enhance baggage, one, and how do you enhance the process by which you deal with coming to an airport and traversing through an airport. So one of the things that we're looking at is this thing called virtual queuing. Right? And as simple as it sounds, but when a passenger can control their journey, all right, and we're looking for some other companies that can probably develop around this tech. You can actually go online and reserve your space in the queuing line rather than coming to the airport and sitting in a long line. So if you're
Yeah.
leaving Nassau and you got to wait in that long line to go to customs and it's long, if you have an 8:20 appointment, it's like I'm here at 8:15, I have an 8:20 and go to the front of the line. You get to control your journey, right? So when looking at transformational technology that the passenger gets to control their journey and control that experience, I think those are some of the driving factors that's going to be critical and essential. So when you look at that, when you still look at how you can track and maintain your bags, but it's still a $3 billion a year business in regards to lost, mishandled bags. How do you fix
Right.
that? We want to look at items above the wing and below the wing to be able to work with some of those things as well. So where we want to work on transformative, we're going outside of the traditional norm of how you still conduct business today and
Mm-hmm.
move it into the future. We talk about it, so we want to go finally getting around to doing it, and I think that's critical and essential. So there's a myriad. We're working on some of those, and as a matter of fact, from a health and well-being perspective, we're looking at autonomous vehicles because I'm doing some robotics right now, which is going to be key. Not to take away jobs, enhance jobs. So I want to make sure we understand. It sounds like we're taking away jobs from people. No, it's to
No, no,
enhance
right.
the jobs and the jobs that you do to keep you safe. They also keep you healthy, and if you do that the right way, then you really have a good economic foundation to drive with that. And I think that's
Right.
what's critical. And I think those are things
Right.
that the audience needs to understand collectively when you get together and do that is how can we go from where we are today to go to the next level?
Right. And like I was saying to somebody the other day, actually just today also, that digital, when you implement digital, digital really implements multiple other layers on top of what is already there. So you're not really killing what is there. You might optimize it and move people around what was there before. But then you build in a couple more stories on top of the single story that you had before that can be,
I
and
think you have
particularly
some
with
latency
5G.
there.
I mean, huh?
Hmm. Well, no, you
Yeah,
said you
I'm
had some
saying.
latency. You were saying you're getting 5G. So
Yeah, no, no, I was saying with building the multi stories and the multi dimensions where people will now need it, more persons will come into the sector, not even though you might move some of the foundation people around when you put these new technologies in place. But with the 5G in particular, that opens the door for you to do multiple dimensions, slicing and all that stuff. So you could create all kinds of avenues, and we're gonna touch on the avenues, what could be happening in the Bahamas in particular, um, because I know you guys have commerce, or what I would call, you call it, freight down pack. I mean, the volumes that you all do, uh, Little Caribbean isn't going to do anything, maybe collectively, but not individually, to drive that type of revenue to keep up. And so, if we look at that, then if we've answered the question sufficient, Madam Killabrew, you could let us know. But so I said, what was the experience and investment, and then so, what are some of the obstacles that people would have to be looking out? The novice would have to look out and preparing to address transforming airports into digital cities. Because y'all have done this for every time I go to Miami, I keep asking you where you're gonna stop, because it's another major piece. One time you had me walking 3 miles just to get from one connect gate to the next, but at least that part stopped, and I get a nice, pretty terminal now, just for me.
well, you get a pretty terminal for you, but it's not going to stop. As a major economic engine, by virtue of law, the money that an airport makes goes back into an airport. So it creates jobs, it creates that level of economic stimulus that's necessary. And my motto has always been always update or evaporate. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
you always have to upgrade the facilities. You can right size, you could value engineer all you want to, but you need modern escalators, you need modern walkways, you need modern jet bridges. So all these things that we did not do before, we're doing now. So as we grow and as we develop, it's going to be a new transformational process. And to give you an idea, and that when I say that we're not done, and I'll get back to your question, is our next level of our capital program is look to building a new concourse K at the end of J.
Wow.
And at the same token, it's like almost $3, $4, $5 billion, if I'm not mistaken, of just what the capital program is going to be as we grow our airport just to meet the consumer and to meet the level of demand. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're looking at obstacles to be prepared to address, as looking at that is, what is the community saying? Because you need to be able to engage with your communities as you're looking at either construction or development. So what are the truth? What are the churches saying? What are the schools saying? What are the hospitals saying? What's government saying? What are the people saying? They have a voice, and they should be able to share that voice. Because if you don't take that into consideration as you're developing and building, it's going to be problematic later on. And as you're doing all of that to ensure from a safety and security perspective, how you do mix and match in regards to that land use. You know, you don't want
Mm-hmm.
to build a school at the end of the runway. At the same token, you don't want to do some several other facets, right? So you need
Yeah.
to be able to think through all of that. Uh, how you're going to manage the levels of expenditures, what's your return on investment going to be? And when you're doing construction of an airport or development around that area, this is a long-term engagement. This is not a
Right.
6 months, 1 year thing. So people need to understand, if you're looking to effectuate change, we're planning for the future. Are you open for this long-term strategic plan? Because it's going to take you 5, 10 years, right? So
Mm.
if you're prepared to do that and you start laying the foundational framework now, it's great. If you think you're going to see a change tomorrow because you're embarking upon this today, then it was not properly socialized. So my biggest concern is when you're
Right.
not socializing what the intentions are and what the impact is expected to be as we go forward, and continue to be fully transparent and engaged continually and provide these updates, you'll get that buy-in and you get to minimize those obstacles. And when you're done, you're going to have a fully functional airport that's going to be able to handle passengers, cargo, create jobs, make sure it's also sustainable. It's not a one-off. You'll have a job, and when construction done, no one else gets an opportunity to be employed. You can be able to start to employ people and actually put that to work, because your biggest economic impact is people need jobs, right? It's
Right.
affordability to be able to pay for housing and everything else. So when an
Mm-hmm.
airport has that dynamic, then the people have a choice and people have a voice in that. What are the expectations? What are the long-term plans? And how does that affect us? And if you're not looking at that, you're doing yourself and everyone else a disservice.
Yeah. And I'm glad you touched on that because I mean we have this attitude in the diaspora in particular, but in particular in the Caribbean, where we want projects to finish within the window of a term of a government. So 5 years we expect these things to be already finished, and airports is not going to be that.
Hmm.
Not the way we're going to build out airports to what we're doing today and all that kind of stuff. So that is good for us to keep in mind so that when the programs ramp up, that we could also have the PSAs to address these as a whole also. And man, so uh, let's see. Oh, this Killaboo said yes, it does. Miss Chantel saying hi. She's one of our famous artists here in the Bahamas.
Hmm.
And we have AC. Well, I know a couple of ACs, but
Freeport there.
move Freeport Airport to elevation across the highway. Well, that might be a solution for geophysical type solution, but I don't know if that's really going to cost any of the revenues and stuff to happen. But it's a thought. We can look at that also. But what we want to focus on here is how are we going to use these airports to generate revenues so that we could get rid of some of the stress and strain that we have as a country
Hmm.
and the like on the
But happy
people.
quick question. As you formulate that, I got to ask a quick question, because
Good.
most of the airports I've gone through and been globally, um, airports are
Have been
designed to
what?
be globally. The global
Oh,
airports
global.
that I
Yeah.
have gone to, uh, airports are designed by law and are designed to be self-sustainable.
Yeah.
All right. So, which means they should not be getting much, if any, government funding, so to speak, unless it's capitals or you're not being able to do a 3P, a P3 engagement of some sort.
Right.
But the revenue that's being generated today and being reinvested back into an airport to do construction and development and maybe they'll create more jobs. I mean, there's supposed to be a strategic plan that's created for that airport or the system of airports that drive what's going on to the Bahamian chain. What does that strategic plan look like? What does that level of interconnectivity look like as you're building out this framework? And what is the strength and emphasis being placed in? It should be a combination of you're going to create jobs, so it's construction development, depends on where the money's coming from. It's cargo development and enrichment, and it's also your concessions because you want your local flair in your airport. So if
Right.
you're looking at all of those things, where are we at and what's looking at it? If you want to be, and you're a major player in the Caribbean, you are a major player, key access
Yeah.
with the family of islands sitting in there. What's being looked at? What is that strategic profile? What does that strategic
Right.
plan look like?
Yeah.
Talking
So
to
outside,
Trinidad the other. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say outside of what's in Nassau LPIA, Grand Bahama was demolished by the
Okay.
hurricane, and they built back pieces of it for individual operators' point of view. But as a airport itself, it's far from anything sensible, and that's one of the major projects. Actually, I think that would be considered the cornerstone project of the $400 million initial investment in airports in the Bahamas, like to rebuild and repurpose, etc. These airports. There's a movement to move from everything coming through LPIA and Nassau and going to some strategic islands directly. And those have already started ramping up um, even before this administration slowly. But I think the foot is on the pedal now
Hmm.
to get it even ramped up even further. But one of the things that we struggle with in the Bahamas in particular is that when we look at the climate change scenario, because the land is so low and down by the sea level, there's flooding and stuff like that in a lot of areas very quickly. And what the gentleman was talking about earlier was moving it to a little higher area. Uh, you could look at it two ways. Moving it to another area which can be a foot higher or two higher. Will that be sufficient? I don't know. Right? I haven't done or read studies on it, but I heard that they've done studies on things like that. But my thing would be is yeah, we like to focus on this initial uh, jobs that we get from construction of the actual building the brick and mortar. And that's why I opened with the idea of the brick and mortar model really is not as efficient as dealing with the digital model. And because the digital model will continue to grow from not just whilst the brick and mortar is being erected, but continually from there onwards. Depend you just software wise forklift things and add.
Hmm.
Whilst I was at Batelco, we did cannibalize some of our own services intentionally, just to keep because the pace of which digital and telecommunications moves and it's speeding up. And now you get stuff like AI them getting involved in things. So it can go even faster than what it was going before. So these are all dimensions that we could touch in too. And so from a strategic point of view, then, the government, I would hope that when they form these PPPs, that the people who come to the table with these, to partner with them, that they will actually be innovative people, not just people looking for a profit, because you could get a profit
Okay, I lost.
very
Okay,
easily.
I lost you for a minute, there. No, but I mean, if you look at from a construction development, if it's an infusion of capital that you're going to need, whether you're getting the money from the IMF or
Hmm.
you're getting it from these 3P engagements,
Right.
there's several facets that you're going to have to look at because there's a level of expectation of revenue, recovery of revenue, and what does that period of time look like. So you're looking at 20, 30 years, whatever it is that you're going to do with whatever the entities are, but what's the caveat that comes along with that in regards from a job creation perspective, not a job loss and a job enhancement. But if we stay
Hmm.
with the digital side of the house, the opportunities of creating jobs within the country using that airport as a catalyst because that's your major economic engine. That's what's driving revenues. That's driving people. It's bringing everything in there that you can have sustainable into the country itself as a whole, but now building around that around your core. Because when one of the discussion points, I think the touch points that say a smart city. So with that, what happens to the local community, and what does that do for the community itself? Right. So does that give you the opportunity to create more jobs in logistics and moving that cargo through the city? Does that digital give you that opportunity to be able to speed up the time to process to get vendors paid by using cargo community systems within a digital footprint and get rid of the traditional paper? Does it create the opportunity from sustainability to start working on whether we want to go to solar, whether we're going to go to wind, whether you start not depending on some of the natural energy resources that you have out there? This is the catalyst of starting to work towards getting you there. Some
Right.
airports have created solar farms. Some airports are actually doing things for wind turbines like they're doing in Schiphol in Amsterdam. So with
Right.
all of these things, it supports the local community, but it starts with whatever the strongest focal point is, and that economic engine, that economic focal point is your airport. So now what
Right.
is it that you can do around that to start to be able to build upon that? So I need that digital, I need you to go ahead, not you, but to look to collapse that digital divide and start building upon that. What do we do to ensure that we can traverse through the system of ours, right? You need smart um, lighting systems. You do smart traffic light. All these things that you can truly
Right.
optimize comes from enhancing your digital footprint. And by doing so, now the reliance changes, right? The dynamics change. And now all of a sudden you have that level of trust you're going to get from the community, that you're going to get from your constituency, that you're going to get for the residents that want to see change, that are sitting out there. Because if you gauge one thing, all of these things are taking place, but what's the percentage of unemployment in the Bahamas right now? What's the
Right.
skill set of individuals who have left the island and have not come back? What's the
Oh,
technical expertise that you're trying? So all of these things come into play. So when I
yep.
talk about one aspect, I'm looking at the whole ecosystem as a whole. It's like whiteboarding the whole thing. Now we
Right.
find out what the common denominators are, then how do you not start to patch that together?
Yeah. So one of the things while you were talking, I was thinking about was this, in terms of all of that, all
Hmm.
of that has to be thrashed out. Whether the government and their partners are doing it now, or their consultants and whoever is doing it, I don't know. But all I'm saying is it needs to happen. I want to show people that digital can create a whole momentum of activity that isn't happening today. So if we look at MIA right now, what
Hmm.
percentage of MIA would you say revenues is driven by digital versus analog stuff?
Well, don't forget the revenues are driven twofold. It's either aeronautical or non-aeronautical revenue, right? So it's
Yeah.
concessions, it's parking, it's all of those things. So but when you look at, there's a digital footprint in all of that
Okay.
that's
Let me rephrase
enhancing
the
the
question then. So
footprint.
you mentioned all these smart things. So from a touch point of view,
Hmm.
what level of revenues or activity that is happening that does not touch digital? Because in the Bahamas, a lot of our airports and other stuff, there is no digital at the sites. We have digital from a communications point of view
Hmm.
and the foundation networks and that, but people haven't, and some apps being addressed for food delivery and maybe some money movements and whatever. But from a business, I don't even know if I could identify one business that throughout the whole Bahamas that will say that they are more than 50% digital, right?
Well,
So,
okay, so let's look at it this way. I think just about every facet by the time I am done will have a level of digital engagement. I'm going to start from outside it. So
right,
now within our parking garage. Now
right,
we have parking guidance systems, so you can find. No one likes to drive around looking for parking spaces any longer. It's red light,
yep,
green light. All right, so that's one. You're going to be able to go via the app and reserve a parking space, so you don't have to worry about driving, not being able to get into getting a parking space. We're looking at omni-channel environments by using all the resources that you have today. Everybody uses WhatsApp. Everybody uses Messenger. Everybody uses another tool. What if I
Yep.
took my mobile app and ingested it into that in an
Right.
omni-channel environment? So as you're
Mm-hmm.
walking, where can I find food and beverage? What's the closest one? How do I engage with all of that to increase my level of spend? I have
Right.
sensors in my elevators, my conveyances, my loading bridges, so I can monitor temperatures. Or I can look at, because I think my light bill is like 50 some odd $1 million a year.
Right.
I forgot what the
Security.
number was.
Mhm.
I need to
Right.
work on bringing that down. So I need to manage that footprint. I need to know when things are operational and not operational. I'm looking at all these things that were
Mm-hmm.
once individual disparate items are being
Right.
rolled into one holistic framework, which is what I'm
Right.
doing now with my team, and then digitizing all of that within an AutoCAD, well, an Esri type environment, but building out that framework to look at what the footprint of your airport looks like. I did some studies with sensors just to give you guys an idea. For those of you that fly through MIA, and when you land, you've already pre-cleared customs, so it's a local flight, it's a
Right.
domestic flight. But there is a bathroom by one of the concourses, right? And I did a study with sensors in regards to utilization. Happy, do you know
Mm-hmm.
in 1 month I had over 100,000 people use one bathroom? No one knew that, but no
That's a
one
lot of
collected.
work.
No one collected the data. So
Right.
now with that, I'm looking at cleanliness, efficiency of the bathroom and staff, utilization of regular disposable items, whether hand towels, soap, or toilet paper. Those come at a cost. So you're talking about effectuating change and creating opportunities. These are where the
Yep.
opportunities come into play because someone has to maintain that. Someone has to manage and support that. Someone has to build that into an ecosystem and ingest it and do resources. I'm doing
Yep.
something else that's even crazier on the outside. I'm going to be trialing autonomous lawnmowers pretty soon to cut the grass because
Mm-hmm.
it's like 80 degrees, 90 degrees. It's too hot outside. I don't want to. But now I'm not taking a job away. I'm going to enhance the work of the individuals of the workers to be able to drive those autonomous units, right? So I'm
Right.
enhancing the skill set, which means you will make more money, which means now I can effectuate change a lot better, right? So all of these simple things have an economic impact. So you're saying
Right.
what percentage within my ecosystem is digital in some capacity? By the time I'm done, it's going to be 100% between
Right.
cameras and analytics and AI. But right now it's growing. It's over 50, 60%. And it's growing. And that's my charge and my challenge because that small footprint that I have that handled 46 million passengers took care of 52. We're designing for 76. I can only build but so much. This level
Right.
of technology should be able to support safely, all right, and manage those level of economic resources to move 76 million people. All right. So I'm nowhere near done. But I need to be
Yep.
able to build upon that. And then now let's find additional touch points in technology to ingest into that and create these resources.
Yeah. And so I asked the question because MIA is really in my mindset from when I came over there to look at the security system and what have you, and when we're trying to do some things in another place. But y'all very much seem to be in the forefront, the top tier of airports around the world, particularly from a technology point of view. Granted, you might not do some of the things that people do in some of the really high digital areas, but you're from a functional point of view, you all are very efficient in my mind, from what I've seen and so forth. And so why I wanted to highlight these and why I was fighting with you for so long to come on the show is because the mindset, and I see that as one of our biggest obstacles that we have right now. Our mindset is here we go in digital, but there's no agency, right?
Hmm.
Uh, I see that as only because people just don't know what digital could do or what other places of excellence, how much digital is involved in what they are doing. And
Mhm.
you just highlighted a simple thing with the bathrooms. I witnessed what's the hotel with the big W on it? If they they did some stuff in one hotel one time when I was there, and when we went back, they had outfitted their bathrooms or their restrooms with all kind of stuff that was relevant to what people wanted to do when they were in the restroom. And they say men don't stay in the restroom long, but that's not true because anyway, that's a different issue. But they delivered what the customers wanted. That was their main focus. and I see you all doing the same at MIA. And I
Mm.
see the Bahamas being a tourist, customer centric location. We need to focus on moving that digital divide and that digital momentum up fast and quickly.
You,
Excuse me.
I said from the standpoint that we need to move this barometer forward more. And the more that you engage with your stakeholders and be able to disseminate that and educate well is going to be key. And I say this when I took over this new unit and building this framework for innovation,
Mm-hmm.
created a new innovation footprint and innovation strategy. And happy when I tell you that I presented it to Customs and Border Protection.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it. I'm going to engage more. Presented it to TSA. Presented it to the airlines. Presented it to the people who clean the restrooms. Their
Right.
senior executives came to see me last week, and we're talking more. How can we collaborate more, looking at the digital footprint, how we can enhance that process? So pretty soon, we just rolled out our first cleaning robot to clean the floors to ensure the floors are even cleaner than they already are. So we're looking at more and more things, but the more that we present our strategy and what we're trying to get done and engage our stakeholders across the entire airport ecosystem, the more that we're finding out how we can collaborate more. A lot of synergies exist that we can
Mm-hmm.
actually address quickly. And now you can start to see the transformational change. And if it wasn't for digital, it wasn't for that having that opportunity to do so, right? You will
Yeah.
never be able to get out your siloed environment because people are only structured one way. So you look at it
Right.
in one aspect of everybody on this call could be great in what they do, but collectively, how great are you? And you're probably not because we love our silos, but we don't like to work well together. Digital
Right.
helps to collapse that and bridge that divide to the point of the change that you could bring about, the economic impact that you can bring about is dynamic. But we have to have the ability to be able to pivot and do so, right? And I think that's going to be key.
Great. Awesome. Well, I don't know who's. Well, I know who will be listening and watching later, but and I'm sure that they're going to get a lot of nuggets out of what you're saying, and be able to leverage it. And so we look forward to what's going to come out of that. But when we look at the scales now, Miami is huge, and the Bahamas and the Caribbean is at a different level. But I find that in digital modeling is modeling is modeling. The scale is just where your mind goes, what scale you could do, right? And what volume of persons and customers move, touch it will make the difference. But otherwise, there's no real difference between the two in terms of location. So when we look at it, what is the best practices to create this experience that you were doing in Miami?
Well,
Is
I
there
mean, it's
stuff?
not. Oh, to create the practice itself. My goal right now, because I'm also in overseeing customer experience. So that's a great question because to me is, I want to hear what the customer is saying. I want and within the community itself, within your smart city, you want to hear what the customer is saying. So it goes back to when we talked about digital, and right now it seems that we can't get away from it. So one of the
Mm-hmm.
things we can be able to do is actually harness more and more data in regards to flights, passengers, whether if there's going to be an impact, how well do we socialize it to ensure that you don't have to worry about a canceled flight. What am I going to do, and how do we fix that? In regards to layover and stress, if I know for a fact that there's two flights coming in, whether it's from Heathrow coming in from Nassau, and it's going to be later than normal, and people have connecting flights, etc. Why can't we socialize that information to the concessionaires not to close? How many times have we come to an airport and it's after a certain hour and
Right,
everything is closed? We can't get anything to. So now, when you can share that information, now one or two concessionaires can stay open. You can get a bite to eat. All these
right,
things that you couldn't do before that we took for granted, we don't want to take for granted anymore. So we need to hear from the customer. What is it that they would like to see? What they don't like, what they would like to see from an enhancement perspective. And I'll take all of that. I was on the flight the other day and two people were beating up and they were talking so bad about the airport. I sat between them because I wanted to hear it. They didn't believe who
mm-hmm.
I was. And I took it and I was able to respond back and I still communicate with them to this day. But for the mere simple fact, I'm not running away from anything, but we have to be able to get our head out of the sand and realize it's
Yeah,
time for a new dynamic. It's time for a change. You need the people resources. You need some of this new talent coming up to be able to embrace that. You need some of the new
Mm-hmm.
technology and people that can develop and manage this technology, put that together into one ecosystem, and then spread that out. So we want to get rid of layover stress. What's the exact stress that we're dealing with from a layover perspective? Is it no availability of food, no availability of bathrooms, or no place to get a hotel room, or no one's giving me information about my bag? Did my bag connect? And what's missing in this layover stress so I can mitigate that layover stress? And then that's something that we need to work on.
Right. You know, and that segments right into this question that is coming up here, because layover is one of the biggest challenges that we have in the Bahamas as a archipelago. If I say the word right, I never say it right. But to go from the States or Europe to one of the family islands, and every one of our islands are unique in personality, etc. You normally would either have to come to Grand Bahama or Nassau. And so, like I mentioned earlier, that there's have been movement over the last decade, I guess, to have more direct flights, which to the islands, which means that you have to build out more airports per why they're doing what they're doing now. So we had the little small airports, like what you would show with some of your homestead, not even homestead. Homestead is a real big airport, but you know what I mean, with the small planes and stuff. But now they're going to be a little bigger. And so when we look at all of that, Jackson Burnside, who is one of our esteemed architects and creator, may he rest in peace. He's been passed on. But he said this long before he passed, and he said by the year 2020, more persons would travel to the Bahamas for its art, culture, heritage, rather than for its sun, sand, and sea. And really and truly, people are coming to the Bahamas for that. Whether we are meeting their expectations is another story. And I see for these stayovers in the airports and the like, we can use digital to get these things to be able to push our arts, culture, and heritage on them. So Mo, you could still hear me because I know your video went out, but I could see
Yeah,
your audio was still
I
there.
took
Yeah,
I took out the video because it turned on me, and I don't know
yeah,
why. So I
no
just
problem.
figured. But
Yeah.
here's the
So
thing from a digital perspective.
go
Go ahead.
ahead. Mhm.
No, one of the things I was saying is from a digital perspective, all of these things, and I think Mr. Burnside said it well, because when I travel, you want to learn about the country that you're traveling, and you can go anywhere for
Right.
sun, sand, and sea, right? But if you want to look at the opportunities, there you go. If you want to look at the opportunities to be able to understand about a culture and everything else, because it's the risk, it's the richness.
Right.
Then what I could do in my airport at the same token is actually display and talk about that same level of information that they can expect when they get to Nassau or when they get to the family islands. So the opportunity presents itself. The thing is,
Right.
why are we not communicating? Say these are some of the things from a digital channel perspective that we would like to do,
Right.
and how best can we do it, right? So we could have done that 5, 10, since I've been running that 5, 10, 15 years ago. But we can
Right.
actually do it now.
Preaching to the choir.
And right. But now given this talking about digital and the fact that your numbers are growing in regards to people coming into the country, and a lot of that is coming on, just due to what came out of Maui and Lahaina with the fires, et cetera, and they're starting to build back. A lot of
Right.
people have actually influxed into the Caribbean. So Jamaica's increased, the Bahamas has increased, Barbados has increased. And is it sustainable? I think the answer is yes, because people are seeing the richness in the culture and the people.
Right.
So they will traverse both sides. But at the same token, it's the more they know about that level of richness, so you can come into Nassau and take a boat over to one of the family islands and enjoy yourself. And if you look at building out your airport itself, based upon the size of the runway, you're not going to drop a 10,000-foot runway in all of the family islands, right? It's just not going to happen. So
Right.
what size aircraft? Are you going to do a hub and spoke? So you can actually change the dynamic. But now when you're sitting down with the thought leaders and you're looking at what the long-term strategy is going to be and what you want to promote to the family islands, Now that's the change that you want to see about bringing about, right? And
Yeah.
then and go from there. But the opportunity does present itself.
Yeah. And on that point, from the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, I know of that being a strategy or a vision in terms of having one or two or three hubs in the islands, and then break down to smaller planes, etc., to go to some of the other locations.
Right.
But this just taking till now for us to really put intentional thought behind getting it done. Maybe it's driven by outside or inside. Who knows? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
But
The point is, right now we're digital, and we're moving from ICTs up to digital transformation, etc. And so that means we could capitalize on infrastructure being cheaper with digital
mhm.
than it is with analog, and so forth.
We,
So will it
we
be?
have another question.
Yeah, will it be saying what steps does MIA taken to ensure that the passengers with disabilities have a seamless travel experience?
Wow. All right. Another great question. I want people to understand that passengers with disabilities are not just individuals in wheelchairs.
Right.
People with autism, just like all these facets, we need to
I
be
think it's
able to look at.
nine
Uh,
categories the UN
and
says.
tons. So we know we've engaged in our lanyard program with the Sunflower, so we can actually see and detect and how we want to engage with the passengers. We've created the multi-sensory room. I'd like to see that more in airports. And I think Brandenburg Airport in Berlin actually is one of the first airports that they have a total, their entire airport design is built around passengers with restricted mobility, no matter what that mobility is in
Mm-hmm.
regards to the tile on the floor and how you walk, the color schemes and what you can deal with. And we're looking at incorporating a lot of that into our design as well. But from what we've done so far, we are one of the first airports to actually deploy like the charging stations for your wheelchairs. We have several actually deployed throughout the airport. So if you're leaving or coming into the airport, we can actually charge your wheelchair. We have done some things with Aura and the glasses to be able to use that to traverse through the airport as well. We have actually worked on, as a matter of fact, we've just deployed a product called Voice, which is absolutely amazing, supports several languages, including sign language.
Mm-hmm.
That what you can actually do is if I come up to you and I have it on my mobile phone, if you're speaking, whether it's Mandarin, Chinese, or I can actually bring it up and you can actually talk to a live person and I can assist you with whatever your needs are and go from there. So we're looking at every facet to allow that passenger to have that level of self-sufficiency across
Right.
the entire travel experience. Because from a dollar perspective, and everyone should understand, passengers with restricted mobility, their average spend in that global perspective standpoint is over $5 billion a year. So that level of self-sufficiency is all everyone's looking for, the ability to go and spend money. But if you look at those numbers, they're almost spending more money than individuals that don't have a restricted mobility. So
Right.
ensure that you cater to everyone, but it be inclusive enough that in your design and understanding to build that out. For us, it's a critical component for us. So we've touched on 5 parts that we've put into our airport, and we're planning to add more. And the responses have been dynamic from the League of the Blind, deaf services. We design our bathroom stalls when you're going with a wheelchair to be able to traverse through you can actually move, you're not restricted anyway. All of these things must be taken into consideration. It's not it's all inclusive rather than being restrictive to a certain class of people.
Right. No, and yes, and with that, I showed the chart that showed the number of different type of disabilities that is registered or recognized, and so that is multi-dimension right there, and you touched on
Mhm.
how you all are tackling all of that. So AC is saying here that he had an experience at MIA, and that where the Wi-Fi at gate 60 is my gate.
Yeah, it's at the very end.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's when you dip down. But man, seeing that you've
I
asked the question, I just wanted to post it so you could
okay, well
register.
it's
When was
twofold.
it?
No, it's twofold. So AC, if you can get access in the airport other than D60, then it's not the age of your device. And I say that because when I was in London 2 months ago, one part of the hotel that I was in, based upon the age of this Android compared to this Android, would not let me connect to the SSID. It just happens. Um, if you are in D60 and all of that is not an issue, then maybe the access point of the SSID is not functioning well, and I need to know that. So if next time you have that issue, there's a way that you can actually reach out and let me know. I'll send one of my guys ASAP, and I'll buy you a cup of coffee. We'll make sure that we make it right. But you should be able to have easy access. No, I'm serious as a heart attack. But you should
No,
have
no.
access to be able to use the order app. And one of the things we're doing for the order apps as well, and we'll be trying out some robotics to actually bring the food to you rather than you order and go pick up. So there's some other things we'd like to hear and like to see. So there's some benefits. And as you look at that, those are some of the things you can actually do in the local community as well. Because happy, believe it or not, the autonomous food ordering deliverable, those robots are actually by in Coral Gables, stopping at street signs. It's all about the machine learning aspect of it. So
Right.
some of these things that we're taking from here is actually being able to bring that out into the community and seeing what some of those benefits are, right? Because time is a precious commodity a lot of us don't have. So these are some of the enhancements. So that's one thing I would get some takeaway. But D60, I will look up at that. D60. All
Yeah.
right.
And AC also says that in that American Airlines process
Oh,
for wheels.
no,
What?
I just saw that. I forgot. American just launched because we saw that in Canada. They have autonomous wheelchairs. They'll basically take you to your gate wherever and come back to a home base, so you don't have to worry about anyone pushing you. So we're trying out some of that as well. American Airlines process for wheelchairs at Miami Airport reportedly makes seniors miss flights daily, according to their own desk rep. We've heard some of those things. Reason being that the wheelchair operators are operated by the airlines. But one of the things we're looking at from an innovation standpoint is how can we enhance that experience? I understand everybody goes, you're congregated into this one little area or a bunch of small areas waiting. I assisted a lady the other day. She was so concerned about missing her flight. It's not good, but there's some other facets to take into consideration. People have this fallacy that if you call for a wheelchair, you get to go through the line first and board first, and it creates a different dynamic. So, uh, how many people truly do need access to it? No, seriously, because guess what? When you do that, and you're in a family of 12, all 12 get to go to the front of the line, right? But you got to realize, so it changes. It's a whole different level of experience and dynamic on top of that. And there's so many things to look at, but when we hear it and we want to see it, it allows us to go ahead and challenge it a little bit more. So maybe there's an app for that. Maybe there's a process that can be evaluated for, or a technology for that. And if
Right.
so, then what is it and how can I work with you, whoever's sitting on this call, to sit and trial that from a starter perspective? Because I think
Right.
there's a lot of money at stake, but there's an opportunity to actually fund that to go ahead and get it through a development cycle. And that's the reason
Right.
why I said digital is key. The thought process is, how do I transition from what I'm doing today to where it needs to be tomorrow?
Right. And that's why I say everything that we do in analog world can be duplicated in the digital world and
It should be,
faster
because
and
if
more
not, I'm not
efficiently.
going back to I'm not going back to a rotary phone. I'll tell you that now.
Good. Yeah. All right. So we can wrap up a little bit in a second, but just want to shout out, Miss. Good to see you. You got some excellent points there. We got to see you in person though. We can't just see you online. Yeah, I know. I don't come to homecoming, but yeah. I'm gonna get there one day.
We're gonna fix that.
Yeah. And then Madam Chantel is saying also good questions. So
My
Mo,
pleasure. Yeah.
you put a lot of stuff on the table for people to think about today, right? And I'm glad that you did it the way you did it because we've been preaching a lot, and sometimes you feel like it's just you one echoing in a room, talk by yourself, and nobody's listening. But you put it succinctly and so forth, and I'm sure a lot of people grab it and understood it better than what I might have been saying it, and so forth. So we really want to thank you for all of that, and Mish is putting some things up here which I can't see that without my glasses. What that's saying, but
It's some really smiley faces with some hearts, man. She's a
oh yes, that for
that
me,
that.
not for Maurice, right? That for me, right?
Don't
Yeah.
worry,
Say yes, just say yeah, just say yeah.
I'm gonna get mine. So yeah, those are for you.
Yeah, I know. Let's go way back to the days of the youth.
There you go.
So
But happy
anyway,
if I could do one thing is your audience. I want to challenge you. So the same things that we talked about, and hopefully it resonates. Send some of this back. I have an open door, and I'll take some of this as I continue to traverse through this ecosystem of ours. And if we can work towards effectuating change and bringing that back to the Bahamas, bringing that back to the Caribbean, where there's
right.
that level of engagement needs to be there, I'm open. Trust me. So I'm around the world and then some. And I'm happy you made some very strong, valid points about the level of maturity and what's your digital maturity compared to a Qatar coming back from Doha
Right.
and looking at what's going on in Abu Dhabi and so forth, and looking at what's going on in Schiphol and Amsterdam. We are there and we can be there, and we have that intellectual property with that mindset to do so. So let's take those shackles off, so to speak, and create that brain trust and be a little bit more open to engage a little bit more. And let's challenge that energy to go ahead and say, how well can we push ourselves? The
Yeah.
only thing that could ever happen is you're going to get tired. And so what? But it's not costing you anything except for a little brain power. But we
Right.
can actually look to effectuate that change. And if you can apply it to an airport and stretch out and enhance that ecosystem, you can apply it to your community. You can apply it to your city. And then now all of a sudden transportation is better. Now restaurant service is better. Now what we're doing for the seaport gets better. Now all of a sudden there's more jobs that's available. Now all these dynamics start to change. And that
Yep.
moniker goes to what Mr. Burnside said. You're not about land, sea, and air, hotel and restaurant management. We want to enhance what the Bahamian, what the Caribbean culture truly defines.
Right.
Right? And we don't want to let that go.
Awesome. So, but before we go though, is there anything that I didn't cover that you would want to have a word to the audience to say?
I have like 8 more pages, but I'll pass. Maybe we'll do a phase 2, and we'll do it. We'll do it later on in the year and see what we got.
Yeah. I know. And then you got to jump on this flight and go all the way to London,
Yes, sir.
and
Yes, sir.
and then wherever else. You and Dominic, my youngest son. I just have to keep looking on Instagram, etc., to find out where you all at, because y'all just all over the place. Yeah.
Those
But
are the things that we have to do. So my thing is this: as I made the statement, when I'm going to London, I was able to get a bank to give us several $1 million to work on innovation. If I'm able to do that and create that dynamic, we should have the ability to create that dynamic, right? And build upon that. So I think it resonates that if you didn't think about it before, start thinking about it now. And
Yep.
nothing is off the table. Absolutely nothing is off the table. And I think with that, it creates a stronger community. You get a community with a sense of purpose that want to engage. And now let's take some of that back.
Yes.
All right, my
Awesome
brother.
stuff. Awesome, man. Thank you kindly. Hope you enjoy your time here. And if anything, make sure give Mom and Tracy and everybody else a nice big hug for me.
Will do,
And
my brother.
we
Will
will
do.
be in touch
Definitely.
soon. Yes.
All right.
Awesome.
Consider it done.
Good. You've been watching Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. We hope that today's discussion is something that you found of value. And if you have found it of value, be sure to hit the subscribe, like, and follow. And tell a friend. Share. Be safe. And make sure that whilst we are moving on forward, that we find a way to continue to increase the digital space that we are operating in. Encourage everybody that you have fingerprints, touch actions with, touch points with, to push the digital agenda, because that will catapult our country to higher heights faster than you could ever dream. Look at what COVID did, slap us twice. And when we thought that we were doing all these things, a lot of that was digital in the background that it was operating on. And some of these people now are fighting that they don't want to go back into the office, right? They were more efficient and productive out of the office, but businesses want people to come back in the office. These are just mentalities, because we don't have, as Maurice said, the digital maturity to understand what we are able to get out of digital, so that we could see how we could even be more productive and constructive. So with that, till next time, we're gonna have hopefully a very, very productive person on the screen for you to ask your questions to, on a subject that is near and dear to everybody who sits in the Bahamas right now, and particularly those in Nassau. Hopefully, I can't say who it is yet, because they got to give me confirmation that they're going to be coming on, and they get their approvals to do so. But till then, same time, same bat channel, we'll be right back here with another show to hopefully stretch your mind and show how we could build this new built environment and get us all off the plantation. Salut!
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative 242